Dynamic spring weather has me thinking about survival kits. Last week on our bear hunt, we had really dynamic weather where one day it was snowing and really cold. One day it felt like we were on the verge of summer. And then the third day was somewhere in between with intermittent rain. And then when I got home, the end of that week, we got a really big late spring snowstorm in the mountains. And I was wondering how many people had gotten caught up there in the mountains unprepared because, hey, it's the end of May, it should be warm, we're right on the verge of summer, and a big storm comes in that dumped, up to a foot of snow, depending on the elevation. The temperatures dropped to below freezing, and if you weren't prepared, that could have been a really bad scenario. And so I've been thinking about survival kits, and really the better term is maybe a contingency kit, or even what the mountain men used to call a possibles pouch. And so I think that we have to define what a survival kit is or a contingency kit, because for me to go in and show you what I've got and the reasons I've got it, if you don't understand the intent of the kit the way I see it, then maybe it won't make sense. And I think the important thing is that we all have to determine that for ourselves, and then we have to build that kit for ourselves, for our experience, for the environments we go in, and the things we do, or maybe the way we do them. So the survival kit really is for short-term duration incidents or mishaps, right? And what we want to do is we want this kit to be able to take, bad luck or a mistake or a mishap and just keep it a great story that we get to relate later and not a tale of tragedy. So we're trying to solve, or I'm trying to solve, I think we all need to try to solve for a few kind of common scenarios. And the first one is that you're caught out for a night, it's unplanned, and you don't have your pack with you. You're away from camp, you don't have your camp. This could be you went on a stalk and it obviously takes longer than anybody ever expects, and you can't find your pack again. Or you do find your pack, or you never maybe left your pack, but you get benighted and you're not able to get back to camp because you got in some really bad blowdown, or you got in a cliff section and the best course of action was just sit down and do nothing. The third is some type of a medical emergency that happens that you either do or do not have some type of evacuation. So that could be, you went out, you went on the stalk, you came back, you got your pack, you got benighted, or that snowstorm I talked about blew in and the visibility was poor, and you decided to keep pushing to camp and you fell off a 20-foot cliff and broke your leg. Or you got wet and you started to become hypothermic. So these are commonplace scenarios. These are not long-term living bushcraft type scenarios. That's a completely separate thing, probably for another conversation maybe a year from now. But these are the kind of commonplace contingencies that I'm trying to build for. I'm trying to have some things with me, and we're going to talk about placement, not only the gear, but where we're going to place it, kind of the thought process behind that. And we'll go through that over the next couple weeks. I just want to go through an overview of these contingency kits. So for me, what I think these survival or contingency kits should solve for is a few common problems, or a few common capabilities to solve for those common mishaps or problems we may have. So the first one is exposure. That snowstorm, if somebody were out there in a t-shirt and shorts and didn't have a way to protect themselves from the wind or water, they're going to be exposed to those elements, and they're going to be set up for hypothermia, right? So we need to solve for protection from wind and rain. And so there's several ways to do that, but we'll just throw that under the common term of shelter. The next one is general first aid. Now, I say general first aid, that's a very broad term. It's really going to depend on your medical experience or your team's medical experience as to what you carry. But we'll just say common first aid, possibly moving towards intermediate medical emergencies. I'm going to talk about medical kits specifically over the course of this series of videos. The next one is signaling. So signaling is important. We're very used to being able to communicate whenever we want with whoever we want. So as an example, on the hunt up in northwest Montana is where I was. Even driving up there were large stretches, many, many miles without any cell phone coverage. And certainly in our hunt area, we had no cell phone coverage. So if somebody were to get hurt, if somebody were to get attacked by a bear, if we were out and somebody got hypothermic or broke their ankle, how would you communicate? So signaling is vitally important. There's a few ways to do that. We want to be able to, as a general rule, communicate with family and just let them know we're okay or we're not okay. A SAR team potentially, and even a doctor, to potentially get medical advice if we need to stabilize a patient. So signaling is vitally important. The next one is, we're going to talk about survival priorities, but we need to be able to procure water. So shelter is our number one priority for survival. Number two is water procurement. So we want to be able to safely procure and treat water. So we want to have the capability of doing that. Now, it doesn't have to be a large quantity of water, but we want to have that capacity within this contingency kit, because oftentimes if we have water, it's going to help us mitigate a lot of other scenarios or other symptoms that could lead to more difficult advanced medical emergencies. And the last one on purpose is the ability to make fire for warmth. Now, oftentimes we're going to build the entire survival kit around the ability to make fire. And while it's important, I've definitely talked a lot about when you can't make a fire. The conditions just don't allow it. I've been on the Elk Talk podcast and talked about that quite extensively. I've written about that and I've talked about it. I've got a YouTube video on how to make fire. We certainly want that capability, but it's not going to be the cornerstone or the foundation of this entire contingency kit. But we definitely want to have that ability to do that. The other thing is, we want to make sure that we build these kits and we work from them, we train from them. So not only do we build them, but we don't want to put them behind glass and never touch them. We want to utilize these kits. We want to work from these kits when we're out there, either training or on a real hunt or a real backpacking trip. And we want to practice with those items in those kits, and then we want to update those kits. We want to restock those kits, and then these kits are really going to change and morph over the years depending on the environment you're in and your experience level, the experience level of yourself and your team. So my kit is a little bit different down here than it certainly was in Alaska, and so you just want to make sure that this is kind of a constantly evolving and always assessing type of equipment here. And the last thing is, and I have to remind myself this as well, but the term is what if weighs a lot. So what I mean by that is, we can run scenarios through our head. We can run these contingencies through our head where we're like, what if I'm attacked by a bear? What if somebody drowns? What if somebody gets their leg cut off? What if the boulder rolls down on top of me and pins my arm? Am I going to have the pocket knife to cut my arm off? Like, you cannot plan for every contingency. We want to plan for the more likely scenarios, and we have to keep the what ifs out, because what ifs will turn a small usable, lightweight, practical survival kit or contingency kit into something that's really big, really heavy, and it really doesn't become practical. It may be the first thing that we leave behind, like a lead brick, when we're trying to cut weight to either go on that stalk or go on that day hike or even fly in on that trip. So this will be a series of videos on survival or contingency kits. This is the first one. We're going to get into a lot of depth here, and I didn't want to kind of cloud that and try to put it all in one video. So we're going to take slices of this and kind of go through this whole thing and talk survival and contingency kits for the next few weeks.